I suppose one of the biggest questions is there's so many things going on at the moment. Nobody knows when the GAA is going to start back or anything like that. And but when it does, the big question is like, what shape is that going to take? Not about like time frame. It will start back again eventually, but what way are they going to work it? I think for me, I think one of the shining lights throughout this whole the whole crisis has been the GAA and GAA clubs all around the country. The help that they're offering elderly people, isolated people with groceries, going to the chemist to get prescriptions, all that work that's been done. And I think it would be only right and fair, and I think it's the logical thing to do, is to go back into club action once things kick off again. The county will always be there, and everybody longs for county action, and I totally understand that. But like, what's normality in Burr, or what's normality in Gurknahu, or all these places around the country? Normality is activity and matches. It's club action. It's minor training, it's under 7 nursery training, it's senior matches, it's junior B matches. And I think for people to get back to normality after all the madness that has happened, I think if the GAA were to give 8 to 10 weeks for club action, when things, just hypothetically, if things kicked off in July, 8 to 10 weeks for club action, change the formats of all the different championships, get them played off within that time frame, get people back happy, get people back, going to matches in rural venues where there's only going to be maybe a max a couple of hundred at matches, well spread out. I think the GAA have done a lot of things in recent years to alienate many of their grassroots members, in my opinion. It's so financially driven now, and while I understand that they have to make money and things like that, that money will always be there to be made with the inter-county game. They can play the inter-county game at a later stage in the year if we're allowed to do that. But I think this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for them to bring all the clubs back on side and reconnect with clubs that they have disconnected with in recent years. I think it's an absolute no-brainer that club action is the first thing that's reinstalled. And it's not for 3 or 4 weeks or anything like that. I think it's for a prolonged period of time, allow the championships to be played. Imagine from your point of view or my point of view, if our county championship started the second week in July and it finished the second week in September. Imagine playing through the summer. Imagine what that would mean to me, you, and 98% of all other players around the country, your average club players. I don't think we should be pandering towards the 2% of county players. They'll all be delighted to be back with their club, and they'll be ready to go for their county once the club is finished. That's my own thoughts on it. I'm not sure what you think about yourself.
Well, my concern is just how realistic it is to have any team sports whatsoever played this side of autumn. I mean, I love what you're saying. Sure, like, look at how much club coverage we've done over the past 9 months or so on our game. Like, we're obviously nuts about it ourselves, no more than we are about the county game, but certainly we want to see the club season thrive, because without that, everything falls apart ultimately down the line.
Can I just ask you something quickly there? So if there's a decision, if we have a 2-month window, 2 or 3 month window this year to play games, what games should we play?
I think it should be club, but then you have to ask yourself, is it realistic? Because there's always this kind of talk of the fight for hearts and minds of the next generation to get, people talking about GAA. And, you see a lot of people giving out when the GAA season finished in September, or in August, was moved back from September, those traditional dates of the first and the third Sundays of September, that people giving out, now you're giving another month back to rugby, to soccer, all these types of things. So if the GAA isn't front and centre, not only is it basically a half of the revenue that goes into the GAA is from the inter-county game. I'm not sure how much of that they can recoup this year anyway, no matter how many games they get played off. But number one, you're not getting revenue into the GAA to the same level. And number two, you're probably not spreading the word of GAA. Now, you will get that goodwill message at the grassroots level, because the club game for once will be put first. I 100% want the club game to be put first, but do you feel that it's actually realistic?
I think if we're going to play anything, I think it is realistic, and I think the GAA have kind of bitten off the hand that feeds them a couple of times. Like, they have to remember, where's the county game coming from? It's coming from all the work that's been done at developmental level in clubs all around the country. And to be honest with you, I think it would be a 2 fingers to a lot of clubs around the country. If there's a chance that we can play GAA for 10 to 12 weeks this year, I think it's a no-brainer that we play club. The county game can go on. We could play 2 championships next year if that was the way. We could play a delayed 2020 and we could play the 2021 later in the year or something like that. I just think this is the logical thing to do, particularly to reconnect with people. People need this. People need this kind of sense of normality. People will feel safe when the GAA is back. And I think they'll feel safe when club action is back. And if there was a concentrated effort on the club game when things resume. Listen, I don't know if they're going to resume this year. I'm hoping that they will. I just think it's more realistic that, which is more realistic, to play a club game in St. Brendan's Park with 400 people at it, a group game or something like that, or a quarter final, or play an All-Ireland final with 82,000 people in Croke Park this year. I don't think that's realistic at all.
Yeah, and as we speak, on Friday, there was an email sent out, basically a press release from the GAA saying that the motion at the GAA Special Congress for a temporary governance structure in emergency situations was passed unopposed. So essentially, depending on how things go, that they can, on a one-off basis, and I believe it will be stopped then, that they can govern what structure the championship will have this year. I do agree with you, the idea behind, we know about the social distancing and keeping the curve flat and keeping it under control, that if you have people coming from all different parts of the country for an inter-county game at whatever county it might be and then going all back in their separate directions, that's definitely a bigger risk than club teams playing against each other. But even like the point made by John Conlon on Game On during the week, I'll just read out some of his comments. They were very interesting. I think it applies to club and county level, but obviously county level, you're talking about far more people being involved. But what he said is, I'll just find it here, I don't think there'll be a GAA championship this year until there's a vaccine and the safety of everyone and their families can be guaranteed. We have players whose grandparents live with them. My mother has had cancer twice and hasn't left the house the last number of weeks. I hate to think that if I was able to play, I wouldn't be able to see them for a number of weeks. We're fully amateur at the end of the day. This is not our profession. It's very important that everyone's safety is guaranteed before any championship game takes place at club or inter-county level. Until those guarantees can be met by the GAA, I don't think any championship games can be played. I think that's the unfortunate reality of this. But I will say, if we can get to the stage that games can be played later in the year, and I think in a list of things that come back to normality, I think games, this is, if you want to keep social distancing, having players tackling each other and going out to batter each other in a match is probably not the way to maintain that. But to some degree, it's, people are going to be interacting more and more as time goes on. But if it's a situation where it gets to October or November, when things like this can be reintroduced, it's possibly less likely that it's going to happen at club level, because the volume of games that are going to happen on pitches all over the country, pitches of different quality. Now, the one upside is the pitches won't have been used all summer, so the growth on them all should be unbelievable. So when they're all cut, they'll actually survive the winter fairly well, I'm guessing, in a lot of instances, unless they're on, water tables or whatever beneath them. But if you're playing an inter-county championship and every game is at the county grounds or Croke Park or wherever it might be, there's a chance that they can be staged more easily. Now, what happens with the crowds, I'm not sure. But just from that point, I think you can obviously see where I'm coming from. Now, with the flip side, the couple of years where we played through the winter with Coola, November and December were actually probably better than the likes of January, February, and in some states, some years March. And we saw all the storms that came in February and March this year. So the latter end of this year, it might be, if you can, better to play off games at whatever level rather than wait until after Christmas.
No, I'd agree with you on that. Yeah, definitely. Just the nature of Croke Park. If they have to, they could play games in Croke Park Friday, Saturday, Sunday for 8 weeks in a row if they have to, because it's going to get professional maintenance. I'm sure they could play plenty of games in Thurles as well, where they have lights, and a couple of other venues around the country that are not going to have a huge amount of traffic. If there's no club action, they can play them at any stage of the year. To me, particularly those really, really big games. So I think that makes perfect sense. It's just that, if it comes that, if just say if things do get somehow back up and running in July, I just think the fact that they can play county games at any stage of the year without too much panic, given the fields and the facilities they have available to them, it's a no-brainer to start with the club. I'd just be worried that if it comes down to a duel between the two at the end of the year, as you say, maybe the logic would suggest, are you going to start the club championship in November? No, probably not.
Would you be happy to play the 2020 club championship in 2021 and also play the 2021 one, later in 21, to somehow try and, even if it's real quick knockout sort of stuff almost at the start of the year, to try and play that off. Or even similarly with Intercounty, play the 2020 championship in 2021, try and fast forward through it, and slowly as time goes on, try and get them back into the proper months.
It's a funny one, isn't it? If you were to win the county title, it will mean as much as any other county title. If you don't, it's an excuse for the rest of your lifetime. But sure, that was a joke. Should we play three games and whatever? That's the way. That's the GAA mentality. If you win, it's as big as any title you've ever won before. And if you don't, it's kind of discarded almost. But I personally would be happy. You know yourself, we're not getting any younger. Like you don't want 2020 to go past and no championship, and then 2021, and just say you pick up a knock and you miss some of that championship. Whereas if you got a chance at the start of the year and a chance at the end of the year, I'd be happy with that anyway. There must be a few people, while some people, like John Conlon included, must be thinking, maybe I'm going to have a chance to actually play hurling when it resumes again. He's obviously got a cruciate. He'd get 9 months. He'd probably be back in action. He'd probably be ready to go, I'd say 1st of January-ish, barring any complications. But then there's other lads that are 33 and 34, and they might be thinking, I'd be ready to go this summer, but if it does not play this summer, like I am a year older next year, I'm still training away here now, a lot more, traffic and training on the body. How will I be fixed next year? So I'd say there's some lads with kind of nagging doubts. Some people are quite happy. The likes of Cathal McShane, maybe the likes of John Conlon, not happy. They might just think this might work out for me, whereas other lads are thinking my last stand could be dragged on, and I mightn't be as good as I would have been if it had went on this summer.
And then a final point, just the idea of all these players training with no fixed date in mind. I'd say some people will struggle with it. Some people, the nutrition plan might go out the window a little bit because they're like, well, I have an awful lot of time to make this up. So it's going to be difficult for players to just keep training on and on and on without, this is a break. It's kind of an indefinite break at the moment, but you're supposed to keep yourself tip-top because you never know when things are going to change and when games will come back. Very difficult.
The first couple of weeks, like I would train nearly every day myself, or do bits, or you do something, be doing something. But I kind of found that I didn't have a goal per se. I was training, I was doing plenty of bits, but I didn't have a goal per se. Then in the last week or two, we've kind of had in our own WhatsApp, there's been, you need to do this week, and this is going to be timed, and everyone's time is going to be put up. And it's like, all right, have a goal. I'm going to do that on Saturday after training a good bit during the week, and I'm going to put my time up, and then I'm going against everybody else. And then next week there's going to be something else, and you'll be going against everyone else too. There's probably only a certain amount of time that you get away with doing that, like 6 to 8 weeks, where you just be like, right, I'm doing all these things. Like, well, is there light at the end of the tunnel? So hopefully, like they don't know when we're going to beat this, pandemic, but at least the GAA, say if everything is okay, we're going to start on the 1st of August, and then at least people can plan. If in 2 months' time things haven't changed and that the goalposts have to be moved, then fair enough. But I think people just want a bit of guidance to know that they're not just training in this vacuum, that they're doing all this and they don't know like what's it for. Everything is like, what are we doing this for? What's the goal? Is there like a milestone? Are there different things that I can look at to try and achieve? And at the moment, we're everyone's just training in a vacuum and hasn't got a clue. Like you could be training right now. You were out doing running yesterday. You were saying to me, you could be out doing running for a championship that's going to start in 9 months' time. We don't know.
I feel sorry for the GAA. I don't blame them in any way, shape or form for what's going on, because if the HSE don't know how this is going to pan out, I don't think the GAA can give any leadership on it. They're best off just waiting. And we did a video with Fintan O'Toole about that during the week. So honestly, I don't know what we're going to do about this. Definitely, we want some comments in from any viewers. What way do you think this should go? Should it be club? Should it be county? What should get prioritised? And if there's anything else in between that you think about this situation.
And just on that, Shane, before we finish, like if county comes back, like is it a county championship if it's played behind closed doors? Like is it the same? Oh, like I don't know. You've been there as well. I was chatting to Paul Townend, the jockey, about when they were racing behind closed doors, and he said, to be honest with you, it doesn't really matter. Like it's that dangerous that all I can see is the next fence or the next horse. I don't really notice the noise. I notice the noise when I'm going past the finish line. I think hurling and football are very different, and there's that parochial kind of element to it. I think, well, number one, like I don't know. You've played matches and I've played matches where there's nobody there, and it just, I don't know, I can feel a bit dead or something like that. It's the noise, it's the out lads shouting at a match. It's, you know, your mother or father or whoever shouting in at you, encouraging you. It's all that. That to me is what the GAA is. I don't know. Would it be a bit heartless being played behind closed doors? I'm not so sure.
If it was a choice between it not being played at all or I'd still be happy to play them in front of no crowds. And I'm talking about club here. If we had to, if you had a choice between no club at all this year or club behind closed doors, I'd take club behind closed doors. Big thing is to play. Like you say, some of us aren't getting any younger. I mean, God knows I'd be sitting on the bench. But, you know, you'd like that opportunity to see, can you, you know, what can you do this year and that kind of thing. So I'd be happy to play it, worst case scenario, behind closed doors. Inter-county, probably the same again. I mean, to the players, when you're in the thick of it, when you're going for a ball, I know there is that roar, but the main thing is just that you're out there competing. I mean, you do so much of your preparation behind closed doors. It is great to have that reward of a full stadium, but the main thing is to get out there and compete. So I'd take that ahead of nothing.
Yeah, hopefully, I suppose the kernel of the point is hopefully we'll all be back at it in a couple of months. It's difficult enough to see at different times the longer it goes on, but I think everyone just has that burst to get back out in the pitch. Like I was chatting to Michal Briodi yesterday, the chairman of the CPA, and he said he's retired. He hasn't played with St. Bridget's in a while, but he said like this kind of thing, like lads like that maybe that would have played a game during the summer and mightn't have trained at all. Even those lads are absolutely mad to get back. Everybody just wants to go for a few kicks. So hopefully in a couple of months we'll all be back at it.